nothing has changed. And let's not forget, he's already paused the British trade deal that he made, promised us last time. So I don't know. I mean, maybe we're celebrating the threats didn't materialize, and I'm happy to say that's a good thing. But he did say in his speech, I could use force. I could have used force. It's the behaviour of a bully.
Critics say Trump always chickens out, taco on tariffs, but it seems to have happened again, or has it? The president has withdrawn his threat to levy tariffs on the European countries which objected to his Greenland plans. In a post on social media, he said the decision came after a very productive meeting with Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, in which a framework for a deal over Greenland was agreed. But what's in that framework? A number of reports suggest it could include the US building more bases in Greenland, and that those would be sovereign US territory, so could include the right to mine for rare earth minerals. It will be based on a similar agreement to the one the UK struck with Cyprus. Well, President Trump is speaking again this morning in Davos at 9:30. There's a ceremony to launch his so-called Board of Peace, of which he is the president for life, so should the UK join? So Ben Wallace, the former Defence Secretary, is also in Davos and joins us now from there. Good morning.
Good morning, Kate.
Well, let's start with that Greenland agreement. The mood must be lighter there in Davos this morning, but what do you think that agreement will include?
Well, by the signs of it, exactly what he could have done all along. I mean, I don't think there's a deal at all at the moment. I mean, it's a fake deal so far. I mean, he could already build bases, deploy people, unlimited amounts. He also had preferential, effectively access to economic deals with the people of Greenland if they wanted it, and the Kingdom of Denmark. I think what he's probably done is Mark Rutte has probably done an excellent job of just actually informing Donald Trump of the facts as they exist. Donald Trump has found some reassurance in that, and maybe he's been either briefed on the existing NATO plans that always has and always will include that part of the world, protecting it from Russia and other aggressive states. And I think he's probably been informed by that. But I don't think he's going to give up on it. Remember, this surfaced from his first term in office as the president. He behaves like the sort of child that is just determined, even when his parents constantly say no. He's going to find a way of one way or the other trying to get more. And I hear the latest people trying to say, yes, but the New Deal will involve sovereignty. Every US base and many other foreign bases around the world are often governed, if not by like pure raw sovereignty in a sense like the Cyprus base, but by treaties anyhow. I suspect the US base in Greenland already has a foreign forces type treaty. The American bases in the United Kingdom have that. Well, they are notionally administered by the United Kingdom. There will be a visiting forces set of rules. You often see that on your program when, for example, an American citizen working at that base is involved in a road traffic act.
Yes.
And we always try and argue about whether we can prosecute them or not. So I think all of this so far is nothing has changed. And let's not forget, he's already paused the British trade deal that he made, promised us last time. So I don't know. I mean, maybe we're celebrating the threats didn't materialize, and I'm happy to say that's a good thing. But he did say in his speech, I could use force. I could have used force. It's the behaviour of a bully.
I mean, we'll come to the damage that may have been done in a moment, but just taking what you've just been saying there, it does seem part of this agreement might be a stepping up of NATO patrols or action in that particular region. Is that a good thing? I mean, how real should we take the threat from China and Russia in Greenland?
Well, I published the first High North, as they call it, strategy when I was at the Ministry of Defence. It has always been patrolled. It has always been part of NATO exercising and operational area of responsibility. I went to visit Iceland and I met a squadron of Italian F-35A who were patrolling the skies. The P-8s, the maritime surveillance aircraft, were being based there and patrolling what we call the Greenland-Iceland-UK gap, which is the choke point in the Atlantic that all submarines have to go through. Britain is the strategic reserve for the High North in its NATO plans. That's mainly where we would pivot to. It's the backyard for our Navy. So I think people shouldn't think, and Donald Trump should definitely not think, that nothing is being done there.
But
It has been
is the
done there
threat
for
is the
70
threat
years.
worse? Is the question really is the threat from China and Russia worse? Has it got worse in the last 6 months to a year, which is what Donald Trump seems to be suggesting here?
Not really. Not towards Greenland. No. Russian submarine capability has been improving and increasing. Also with their counter cables, the GUI as they call it, their program that targets cables. We often see the Yentov, the Russian spy ship, lurking around our waters. They've picked up in activity there, but that has been equally effectively matched by
Okay.
NATO increase in
Yeah.
activity. What will happen in the longer term, which actually worries Russia as much as it worries us, is China will seek to dominate the Northeast Passage as a shipping route and send ships down through on large scale through into the Atlantic that way. It hasn't happened yet. It's a long way off. But there's no sign, and there never was as defense secretary, that Russia and China were trying to usurp the sovereignty or indeed influence the governance of
Okay.
Greenland.
And where does it leave the UK's reputation? I mean, there's a lot of push and pull around what Keir Starmer, the approach he's taken here, whether diplomacy was right, whether we ought to have toughened up our stance. How damaging has this been for America's relationship, especially with the UK?
But I think Keir Starmer's plan to give away the Chagos Island is more damaging to the relationship with Donald Trump. I think what I would say from other nations around Europe would be the curious spectacle of Britain being passionate at Prime Minister's questions yesterday by Keir Starmer saying he wouldn't compromise his principles on Diego Garcia. But when it came to the threats towards Denmark, one of our closest and friendliest allies we have, I didn't see much passion there from Keir Starmer over the last 2 weeks. It
So
was
has
a
he
sort
played
of,
it wrong?
I think Keir Starmer hasn't even got the trade deal in place with Donald Trump. I think he gave all the goodies to Donald Trump, the state visit, all the sucking up before anything was signed and sealed. And I think what you have to deal with Donald Trump is you have to be clear, strong. You don't have to be insulting. You don't have to be trying to play a different agenda. You just have to say what is acceptable and not acceptable, show you have alliances and friends in that space. And then incrementally, it's carrot and stick in the same way the Americans treat us. I don't think there is a surprise. I mean, I think the good news of Davos, Kate, is there is a new sort of leader of the West in town. If you read Mark Carney's speech that was delivered in Davos the day before yesterday, it's simply a very real reflection of the world we live in and what middle powers like Britain, Japan, and others should do in an environment if President Trump determines that his future direction is might is right, and indeed that the international rules-based order is to be scrapped. I think it's a very enlightened speech. I think we should all look at it. We've all
Yeah.
it chimes with our experience
Can I
when you're in government as well.
can I ask you? I've got a couple more questions, and we're running out of time. In a word, should the UK sign up to the Board of Peace?
No, well, no, I don't think so. Not now that Putin and the Belarusian president have been invited. I mean, the men who are responsible for the death of thousands, millions of people in Ukraine shouldn't be anywhere near the Board of Peace. The good news I read last night was, however, that some of the Gulf and the Middle East nations had joined it. That would have been a good thing, but I don't know why we've now got Putin and people like that being involved.
And
These people don't even understand what peace means.
And on President Putin, Steve Witkoff is travelling to meet him today in Russia. President Zelensky and Donald Trump are meeting today in Davos. Does that momentum tell you that there is some hope there for a deal?
But I think everyone is still trying for a deal. Don't get us wrong. No one doesn't want a deal of peace. But when we talk about one thing, I mean, that could be probably the most important thing and not easy for Zelensky or anyone else to give away. President Putin, if you remember, his one thing was he wanted to occupy and basically destroy Ukraine. So I think we'll have to see. It would be horrendous if we saw Donald Trump trying to bully Zelensky again. I think the plus side for Zelensky is Donald Trump's taken off the table all the leverage you ever have. He doesn't have tariffs on Russia. He hasn't provided a single dollar to Ukraine. He's lesser in that role than he thought he might. His predecessors were. So he's got lesser leverage over Zelensky. But ultimately, Zelensky and the people of Ukraine will have to make the decision. It's also a bit like the Greenland sovereignty. If the United States wants to go much further on sovereignty, that will require the consent of both the Greenland people and the Danish people, and that's potentially a long way off.
So Ben Wallace, the former Defence Secretary, thank you very much for joining us from Davos this morning.
Yeah, it's such a good point that about if the one thing is the arrangement of the land of Ukraine having been invaded by Russia, well, that one thing, it goes to the heart of what Zelensky can reasonably agree to, and he said he's willing to freeze the territories but go no further than that. Is that what Putin's willing to agree to? Well,
we may hear more after that Steve Witkoff visit to Russia to meet with President Putin, and we'll keep you updated on the meeting between President Trump and Zelensky today in Davos. We understand that Zelensky and his team are currently on the way to Davos. If you have to go away from your radio for any reason, very sadly, you can catch up with the best of what happens today on John Pinar's programme from 4. He does a really good roundup of what you might have missed in between.